I recently traveled to Boston to meet up with my good friend, one of my all-time bass heroes, the great John Patitucci, to sit down and talk about his new album, Spirit Fall, with Chris Potter and Brian Blade. We go deep down the rabbit hole of his entire recorded discography as an artist. We talk about practice, we talk about touring as a sideman, we also talk about what John is working on now, having just turned 65, and how he is still working to squeeze more music out of both the upright and the electric bass. And we answer once and for all the question of high action on the electric bass. This is the John Patitucci interview. As I listen to music through my life, the people I am fans of, such as yourself, I'm sometimes disappointed because I put my own expectations on an artist's music.
Right.
And when those are not met, when they provide us with something new to listen to, you're like, oh, kind of wish they did the thing I fell in love with in the beginning. Listening to this new record reminds me that every single time you put out a record, I feel that the same way I did the first time I heard you play.
Wow.
Which is, as a fan, is just so rewarding. And it's, it's what, and I know we all suffer from it. Like we like what we like about certain people. It's just an amazing thing to listen to and watch your career and be such a massive fan of it and get to experience that as a listener. And now we come to this first record. It's so new, I don't even know the name of the record. So can you please tell people what this record is called? Because it wasn't on the listener, right?
Right. It's called Spirit Fall.
And you just did it, you were saying in August. Here we are in the beginning of 2025.
One day.
In one day. I love that.
Those guys are beasts. They really are special.
Yeah, so we're talking about everyone in one room, open microphones. Yes. There's a lot of trust that goes into that.
Yeah, like we had, in the bunker, the big room where the piano is.
Yeah.
Brian was in there.
Okay.
And we were in the adjacent, with the doors wide open, booths that are spacious.
Right.
So that nobody felt like they were in a booth.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of that, though, and ask you those earlier records from John Patitucci, the first one, and Sketchbook, and On the Corner, all those records. Did you do a lot of that stuff at Mad Hatter? I don't know the... All
of the ones in California were at Mad Hatter.
Okay.
So that's at least 6 records, I think.
That's through, like, Another World?
Through...
Mistura Fina, into the mid-90s?
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Yeah, all Mad Hatter.
Did that feel like a home for you for recording?
Yeah, that was home base.
Okay.
And Chick gave me an unbelievable lockout deal.
Okay.
It was $600, and we could go from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. if we had to.
Wow.
But we never went that late.
No, okay.
Except maybe when we were mixing, but not even. We usually did 2 tracks a night. We'd just do 2 tracks a night because we had a decent budget in those days. I mean, it's not a lot of money.
Right.
Still.
Right.
But now it's more money than a record company will give you.
Incredible. So how many days would one of those have taken?
Well, we'd probably track about 5 days because we do 2 a night.
Did you have the luxury of rehearsals?
Those things, we didn't really rehearse much on those things because I knew those. We knew each other so well, and I was confident that we could just go in and knock stuff out.
So now fast forward to the new album, which you cut in one day, and we were just talking before we got live here, you didn't rehearse that, and you sent the guys some demos.
Yeah, and the music, but
this is like a lot more through composed stuff.
Yeah.
And this is not blues in F,
them. No, I trusted them. And it just felt, with those guys, it's just so organic. I was more stressed about myself because of the stuff I had to play, the chord melody stuff, and some of it, even though it wasn't incredibly technical in a certain way, in another way it was. The chords, to make every note speak and keep the bottom and do all this.
So you've already answered a couple of questions I have for you already, because that is the thing that is most amazing about the quality of the sound of the electric bass, especially, if you want to talk about the chord melodies, is that there's no weak point in any part of the range.
Thank you. We worked hard. Because what it was in my mind I had to work hard. Like the tune Spirit Fall is something I've wanted to do my whole career, actually. Play a jazz tune like where the drummer's playing like Elvin, and it's kind of like Elvin meets Wes Montgomery. My tone is dark, and we found a way so I could play the chords and still have a nice meaty, because it's in A, so the low A is there, and have things really thick. And that's really, a lot of that has to do with John Davis was one of my bass students years ago. He's one of my favorite engineers I've ever worked with in my life.
Right.
He understands what we're trying to get, and we run through the tube amp and we mic that, and then we have a nice DI.
Okay, so you had mics, because there's such a big presence to it as well. It was like, this is not a flat DI
and Peg
sounding.
B15.
Old school. Really old school. Wow. Do you remember what kind of mic? Maybe we'll have to ask John.
We'll have to ask John about that, but he has a lot of Neumanns.
Yeah.
And the acoustic bass, I think he had one of those
C12
67 or something.
Yeah.
He had a couple of, or four, you have to ask him. He had one close to the bass and one a little further from the bass.
Okay.
So the room, and for the acoustic bass, that was huge.
Yeah.
What he did.
And the sound of the acoustic bass, I'm thinking like, it had me flashing, but like my first impressions when I put those tracks on was like, Jimmy Garrison, Reggie Wayne, Rudy Van Gelder, like, but now really close and huge sounding, like not an LP, not a vinyl thing. Obviously now it's digital. But
it will be a vinyl. This
amazing.
Coming out of and the other thing too is going to be a double vinyl, so there's no tone loss.
Wow.
Because I was like, how can I eliminate tracks and everything? Dave was like, we'll do a double vinyl. Dave's amazing. I love being on this label, by the way. He's really for the music. So anyway, with the acoustic bass, also due to the fact that the thing you said is an interesting comment, because that bass I've only had for maybe 6 years. It used to be Art Davis's bass, who played with Train.
Oh,
it is an old Galliano. Finally got my Italian bass, the dream of my life.
Okay.
Right? I had given up on that because I had, I still have the Pullman, and I have a copy of this Italian bass that I bought first, which I did my solo record on, before I had the Italian bass.
Is that from Thomas Martin?
No.
Is that one of those? No.
It's the copy of the Galliano that I have was made by Trevor Davis.
Wow. Okay.
It was brilliant. And my mentor, Chris Poehler.
Yeah.
His name looks like Poehler. He had both of Art's basses when Art died, and he restored them at Lisa Gas in L.A.
Right.
And Trevor Davis was working there for a short time. So she had some old wood, and she let him copy the Galliano and make this bass. It's a killing bass.
Wow.
And I did my solo, the Soul of the Bass record is on that bass.
Wow.
And then at one point my mentor is saying, you should be playing the real Galliano. That was Art bass. The history of that bass. I said, are you kidding? I got 2 daughters. I was paying for, the second one was still in college. I'm like, I've given up on my Italian bass dream.
Right.
I had a nice French bass for a while that I cashed out when my first daughter started going to college. It was a Viome. Beautiful bass.
Wow, okay.
But it was like, so he said, no, we'll work out a deal. You'll just pay me like a car payment every month for the rest of your life.
Right. You're locked in.
Yeah. So I've been playing this bass, and it means a lot to me. Also that it was with Train, but also that, Art was a really fine bass player, man.
Right.
And
is that something you're okay taking on the road?
No.
As well? No.
That one never goes anywhere unless I'm driving in the car.
Okay. So it's an in-town instrument.
It only flew when it came to me. That was it.
Wow.
So, yeah. So that's a big thing why that acoustic bass sound is what it is. And the other is John Davis.
Yeah.
And the fact that, now I've been playing so long, I understand microphones better, and I understand what I really want. Mm-hmm. Whether I get it or not is another story, but I know what I'm really hearing in my head that I'm going for.
So 2 things I want to go back and talk about. You talked about the chord melody stuff and the chords on the electric, getting that accuracy. That had me flashing back to, I want to say the tune is Searching, Finding. That's the name, right? I was racking my brain. That's one of the albums that's not available online. But
that's the first one, John Patitucci.
That's on that record, okay.
That's with Chick and Peter Erskine and Dave Witham playing like synth organ.
Yeah.
And that was a very, that record for me, first of all, it was a dream come true. I was playing with Chick, and I used to play him some of my tunes on the piano, and one day he was like, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm trying to write some tunes and play. Yeah, but what? Do you have a band? You need a band, and you need to make a record. And I was like, great. How's that going to happen?
Yeah, right.
Nobody wants a band. Who's going to sign me? He goes, don't worry, I'll take care of that. And he was the one who got me on JRP.
Wow.
I think they were really interested in getting Eric because they wanted a saxophone player.
Gotcha.
And he said, you can have Eric, but you must sign John.
Nice.
He's a composer. He's written a lot of music. And so they initially wanted demos, but he said, no, you'll hear the record when it's done. And they said, well, you have to produce it? Yeah. And then he came to me and said, they want me to produce it, but really, I know you know what you want to do, but I'll help you. I'll teach you how to make records, though, which he did. He's very organized.
So talk me through that. Like, I've just had the 20th anniversary of my first record. I replayed all the bass on it, and we put it out as a remix, remaster. Super fun. And it had me flashing back to, like, all the things we did in the studio and how it was my first record, how new it was. Go back to that moment of being there for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've already done a ton of records at that point with other people.
Yeah.
Right? And been in Chick's band.
Yeah.
First of all, did you feel at any point a sort of co-leader or at least co-contributor to the electric band?
Yeah, he gave me so much creative space, and his thing was like, they want me to produce a record, but I know you know what you're doing, but I'll help you. But he was great.
Okay.
And my next question to him was, okay, that's great, Chick. Will you play on it? And he did play on some things, including Search and Finding.
Right.
But he taught me how to do the budgets to make sure I stayed on things. He helped me be organized about what I really wanted, to write everything down and just go after that. Like in terms of, who do you want to play with? Who do you want to get? And I knew already. He said, write it down. We'll help you make that happen.
Was there anyone on those early projects that you hadn't played with that was like a milestone for him to make that leap to that person? Or
Well, I hadn't played with Brecker yet. And he was one of my big heroes.
Yeah.
And he turned up at this John Abercrombie quartet, with George Mraz and Peter Donnell and crazy Richie Byrack. It was an amazing group, and Peter Donnell played drums. Wow. So I was there, and all of a sudden he came in, and I was like freaking out. I was 19 or 20.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I went up to him and I said, man, Mr. Brecker, I'm a huge fan of yours. And he's looking at me, he goes, wait a minute. It's nice to meet you. He said, haven't we played before? And I said, I wish. And then 5 years later,
boom.
We were hanging out, and then 7 years later, he played on my record.
Okay.
But we started to know each other through Chick, I guess, is how we...
So 7 years, you did the first record in 88?
I think so. I think it was actually recorded in 87 at the end of the year. It came out in 88, something like that.
But meaning you would have met him at that time around 80, 81, the Matheny record with Dewey Redman and him, like that period of Brecker. Wow. Did you go see, were you a fan of going to see shows like that? Did you even have time to go see shows?
Oh, I went to see a lot of shows, even when we were young in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
My brother would drive us into San Francisco to Keystone Corner, Great American Music Hall. We saw a lot of people, including Bill Evans' Trio.
Wow.
With Eddie Gomez.
Okay.
And I saw Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I saw Thad Jones. A lot of different people. McCoy Tyner. A lot of people that, some I wound up playing with later. It's crazy, including McCoy.
Right.
So, so Chick was so cool about everything, and he trusted me because we'd already been
in the record making process as a leader.
Yeah, he trusted my instincts as a, but he was helping, and helped me. I felt so comfortable. I was at home at Mad Hatter Studios. I had him there.
Yeah. It
made me feel really. And I was so excited to play with all these guys. And it was really something for me. It was like a Cinderella.
What was the balance like of that excitement versus, we're actually making a record here? Or was it just
It was all excitement and just, I was pretty organized going in.
Good.
And I had written music and I knew how I wanted it to sound. But, and everybody came in and it just killed it.
How close to your vision did it end up being?
I think it was better than my vision.
Really?
And I think to myself what a nut I was and how naive I was, because I was trading with Brecker on my first record.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, are you stupid? People are going to just laugh at you, And he was so cool. He was so self-deprecating too. He was always like that.
Right.
And so he made me feel real comfortable. and you know, a lot of like Beasley and Witham were already in my band. You know, my first bands were 2 keyboard players, me playing both instruments, and the first drummers were like Tommy Breckline and Alex Acuna played with me too.
Okay. I mean, I've seen a lot of and heard a lot of footage of that band with Vinny, with Tavoloni, right?
That was quite a group.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to Europe a lot and played, and that was exciting and really wide range of music.
Yes.
You know, crazy wide.
And this is off the back of already having been superstars with the Electric Band in the 80s.
It was kind of wild how that happened.
So how was the feeling of like, I'm imagine you were playing much larger venues with Chick when you would go to Europe.
Yeah.
Big theaters, sometimes arenas or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you scale down to like the New Morning in Paris.
Yeah, or clubs. But in Italy, played some concert halls.
Sure.
In Italy, they went nuts. They're very proud of, you know, somebody who is Italian, who came, you know, whose grandparents in my case, came over and, you know, and I loved it. It was so beautiful. But I didn't care where I played. I had Vinny and those guys. I was like,
wherever,
let's play at the 7-Eleven or whatever, you know. Play at one of those auto grills. I wouldn't care.
In Germany.
In Italy, those auto grills had some of the greatest food ever. But anyway, so that was. I was just kind of amazed, you know, because to go out with Chick. Also, the thing was, I was so excited to play with Chick. Period.
Right.
I had been wanting that gig for a while. I didn't know how to get it.
Yeah.
Because I was playing with Joe Farrell. I said, "What do I do?" He said, "He doesn't really have auditions much."
Right.
So it just happened, you know. That's a whole other story. And then, so here I am playing with Chick, and I didn't know that the Electric Band was going to be a big thing. I was just excited to play with Chick.
Yeah.
I was thrilled, and I was learning so much. And at first, it started off as a trio. It was Weckl and me, and Chick, and that was it. So that was heavy, because you know I played with people I thought I could improvise, and then I go to the first rehearsal, and we start playing, and he starts blowing, and then it's my turn.
Yeah.
I'm the only other soloist who has to deal with changes. Let's say.
Yeah.
It was like, I always tell this story, it was like being in the ring with Muhammad Ali. The comping was so like, pat, poop, pa. I was like, I can't even.
He was aggressive as a comper.
Yeah.
I've always noticed that about him.
Yeah.
And he didn't feel like one of those guys who like never shut up. He was.
He was engaging. He wanted to make a conversation out of it. And so I had to get a lot stronger rhythmically about saying what I meant.
Yeah.
And really delivering a phrase with power, because otherwise it was just going to get blown out of the stage.
Right.
And that was good for me, because you know, I was always into lyricism and I was a rhythmic player, but I had never encountered comping like that in my life.
And was it a struggle in the beginning? It was like
it was scary.
Okay.
Because it was like, first of all, he just played the solo of Doom, you know, that obliterated the universe, and then it's my turn. And the other thing too is his changes are hard to play on.
Yeah,
they're not easy, and he doesn't write any of the alterations on the music. He used to get mad at me because I would go, "Can you play that chord again?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a sharp final five." And the next one, and I would do the chord symbols so that I could understand what was in them. I could hear it, but I wanted it on the paper too. Because G7 didn't cut it.
Right.
When he plays blam, and it's got like a double diminished, and you know. What?
And how much would he kind of cruise in and out night to night with that? Would it stay kind of in the same ballpark, or did he get pretty loose? Like, especially in the context of the Electric Band.
And we got very tight.
Okay.
To the point where I would be blowing and he'd finish my sentence. Like we would play unison sometimes. Wow. He just was really in there, and I got spoiled because he would help shape my solo and everything, and it would, like, at the end of it, the people would respond like crazy. And then sometimes I would go play with another piano player and
hey, what happened?
Because he was so good at it was like you were playing tennis with him.
Right.
Like it was like back and forth.
Well, this is fascinating about the new album, and it's great that you say this, because a feeling I had listening to it was the question and answer, but just between you and yourself at times with the electric bass, when you're talking about holding the low end, playing the chords, comping, and playing melodies and soloing, and it never feels like there's something missing.
Well, you know, I praise God for that, because playing with those guys, though, is a really deep bond. It's a deep friendship. It's a love. It's a family, and you know, especially obviously, you know, Chris is total madman. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
So am I right in thinking that Chris showed up on your radar, at least as an artist?
Early 93.
93,
okay. Because I asked Brecker.
Oh, wow.
I said, I need to go out and I want a New York tenor player.
Okay. So this was for touring?
Yeah.
So was the first record One More Angel with Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the time I came out. But even before that, I was touring and I was living in LA and I was like, man, I want a New York tenor player. He said, get Chris Potter.
Because it's that transition in the 90s that fascinates me. When you come from Heart of the Bass, Another World, Mistura Fina, and then suddenly you're with Paul Motion and Chris and Mike and Alan. Yeah. And Alan's sort of like 1 foot back in California. You know, and then it's like full transition.
Yeah, I wanted to, one of the reasons why I moved back to New York, also I was raised in Brooklyn, so I was moving home in a sense, but I'd been out west for a long time. Now I've been back so long, I've lived more of my life in New York.
Wow.
Still.
Okay.
So, but I was out there and I loved it. I learned so much. I was a studio musician. You know, I studied classical bass in a college, and I left after 3 years and went on the road because my teacher wanted me to give up jazz and electric bass and everything and be solely an orchestral player. And I bagged it. I just left. So, after a long time in LA, you know, and also having been such a jazz fanatic, and you know, hadn't gotten a chance by then. I'd play with Chick and Herbie, and I'd play with Freddie and Wayne. But
you played with Wayne on electric first, is that right?
Yes,
back in the day,
and then acoustic later. But I met him in 1986 on the Chick, Wayne, and Al tour.
Oh wow!
Chick's band and our band, and Wayne's first really, you know, he had Gary Willis and
Tom Breckline,
and by then it was Mitch Foreman, incredible.
Yeah.
So they were on the road with us, and I met Wayne. We really hit it off, and then in '87 I played on Phantom Navigator a little bit.
Exactly right.
And then after that, you know, we stayed in touch, and he would call me every once in a while, but couldn't do it because our Chick schedule was heavy.
Okay.
And then in '95. After 10 years with Chick, I kind of left the electric band and stayed with the acoustic band because I was going through, my first marriage was a mess, and I was going through a divorce, and I needed to go home to see if it was going to work or not. And so I left, and then I started to, you know, do other things. I was doing a lot with my band too, but then I met Sachi, and we got married in '95.
Gotcha.
And so we were there for a while longer, and then in '96 we moved back to New York because basically she said, you know, we're not spring chickens now, and my clock's ticking. Do you want to have kids? And I said yes.
Yeah.
So then she said, do you want to raise your kids in LA? I said, hell no, we're out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
I was afraid to go back to New York. She said, let's go back to New York. You're from there. I said, man, they can call Ron, Anthony. And I was like, well, I mean, really? I was afraid. I was scared to death. So I started calling Brecker. By then, we were really good friends. I called Billy Hart. We had become friends. We played. Al Foster and I had played. You know, DeJohnette, we were friends and played. So everybody said, you know what? Just come back. You belong here.
Right.
I was like, but what about... Even Ron was beautiful, too, Ron Carter.
Yeah.
He said, man, I'll tell you what... you know, he's incredible. I'll tell you what Sam Jones told me. You know, there's always room for another serious cat. And he was so sweet about it. Like he said, you know, just basically come, you know.
Yeah.
He said, you know, so he was really kind.
Was this anything, as you were making records in the late 80s, early 90s, was there anything you were missing or knew about New York sonically that you kind of longed to make records like?
I wanted to play, I wanted to not have to leave town to play with great jazz musicians.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Not that there weren't. There were some great jazz musicians in
Sure, but
in
it's
LA.
not the same.
It's not the same.
The community isn't the same in LA.
There's millions of tenor players.
Yeah, right.
Millions of guys that can really play drums in jazz. And that's the thing, going back to what you said about me feeling comfortable playing the electric in a jazz setting. Yeah. Brian Blade, you know, changed my life.
Right.
His ability to play any music with a dynamic range that's incredible.
One tune came on the record and I was like, did you get Nate Smith on a track? You know, not that would have been a bad thing or anything.
And we played together, sure.
And of course, I knew you guys played together. For a split second, I was like, hang on, that snare's deep and big and this and that and the other.
Lepine, the funky, the African tune,
And then you listen to one note, and then of course it's Brian. But yeah,
and Brian on that tune, he's playing the shaker while he's playing the hi-hat. It's like, what?
Yeah, I figured that was all live. And you hear the big hats as well. You hear that sound.
So yes, he's so broad in what he can do.
Do you remember when you first played with him?
Yeah, it would have been on a Danilo Perez record.
Okay.
Before they got in Wayne's band, I was already dealing with stuff. I was on Alegria, which took years to make, and I was the only person who played on the entire record. Wow. There were different people coming in and out. Terry Lynn's on some tracks, amazing. And then Jim Beard started on the record, but didn't finish it. There was a falling out with him and Bob Sadin. For some reason they didn't. So then they brought Brad in for a little bit, and then they brought Danilo in. Terry Lynn was really after Wayne. Terry Lynn had this vision of that band with Wayne, with me and Danilo in it. Oh. And she was, and then what happened in the middle of the record, she got real busy with Herbie touring. Oh. And when Brian came in and the four of us played, there was just something that happened. Yeah. And
it happened for 18 years or something, right?
20 years.
Oh, 20 years, yeah.
So, but Brian, I had played with him just before that on the Motherland record, which must have been late 90s.
Okay.
And then the band started around 2000 or something like that.
Wow.
But also, he came in on the end of Alegria. They both did.
Right.
So by the end of it, they were both playing with Wayne in Sacagawea and some stuff.
Yeah.
And she moved through the fair, and it's like, wow. Yeah. It was exciting. And so, Brian changed my life. All of a sudden, I could start using microphones and mix my sound with the pickup, and sometimes not even use any pickup on stage. Just microphone going through my amp and sending everything else to the house.
Well, when I saw you in L.A., I don't know, that wasn't planned. The amp didn't show up for the gig, but that was all mic with Brian.
Maybe they took some DI too, but I think it was pretty much mic.
I think it was all mic, And it was really amazing. I don't remember whether we talked about this specifically on the phone, but my impression of Brian from the first moment I heard him, probably with Joshua Redman or Kenny Garrett.
That's the first time I heard him on a radio.
There you go. In the 90s, maybe Mood Swing, something like that, with Brad. And he, in some senses, hasn't changed at all. He has this very repeatable thing that is also kind of infinite. So it to me is not like this very muscular, heavy, egotistical thing that needs like weightlifting. Yeah. It's this almost very hard to describe, but to me it's very repeatable and infinite in his improvisation. Every time I hear him play
always completely fresh. Yeah. But he always plays the music and rises it to another level.
Right.
And his sense of dynamics and sense of musicality are just ridiculous. So that made a big difference in me being able to finally do that thing that I always wanted to do.
Did you have headphones on in the studio?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. But I could also hear my amp.
Right.
And I could hear him in the headphones and also feel him.
Yeah.
Because we were all bleeding into each other.
And I mean, you did, I forget the name of the record, but you did something, a trio with no chords with Lovano and Brian.
Yes.
Right?
And that was exciting too. We played right in the same room that time.
Really one room.
Close to each other. Yeah.
What, in C or something, in Avatar?
Yeah, in C.
Yeah. So it's interesting, Mad Hatter was your home. Where did you get to Mistura Fino and those albums? Was that also Mad Hatter?
All Mad Hatter until we moved.
Hatter. And then
One More Angel. One More Angel was on Sound, which used to be on 43rd or something.
I remember that. And then when did the transition to Avatar happen? It feels like you had a run of dates, a run of solo albums there.
I think Sound was...
One More Angel and Now?
One More Angel and Now. And then the next one, which would have been... Is that Imprint or maybe Imprint?
Right.
Yeah.
King Kong.
Yeah, all that.
Great too.
Yeah. King Kong, yeah. That was wild too, man. That was a treat to be with all those masters of Afro-Cuban, Panamanian,
so that's
Puerto Rican.
El Negro?
El Negro.
And Giovanni. And Giovanni,
Killing.
On one side, and then...
It's funny, I had a student today, and she's really in the global, and she's really into that stuff. And I played her. She had never heard that record, and she flipped out.
Yeah.
Danilo, because she's a piano player.
Okay.
And Giovanni, she couldn't believe it. You know?
Right. And then on the other side is Jack DeJohnette, right?
DeJohnette, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Mark and Chris, like
Mark and Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what was happening when I moved back to town. Chris was in my band, and then Mark toured with me.
Okay.
Also. And I got to know them both very well. I loved them. And they're incredible.
Yeah, I saw you guys, I think, at Sweet Basil, probably called Sweet Rhythm by then, with El Negro.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing band.
I was still Sweet Basil when we first
Still Sweet Basil? Okay,
yeah,
so maybe I was Sweet Basil then.
Yeah, man.
So, it felt like a real run of records at Avatar, and then you get to The Bunker.
Yeah.
Then you get to John.
Yeah. And Joe Barbaria was the engineer on all my New York records. He's amazing, too.
Yes.
I was really fortunate. Because when I left, L.A., it was like Bernie Kirsch had done all my records.
Right.
So Alan Pasqua said, check Barbaria out. He's great.
Nice.
Another Brooklyn guy from Bensonhurst even. Wow, crazy. And I'm from East Flatbush.
Okay.
But so he was incredible, Joe also. And John used to come and check him out.
Oh, okay.
John was so young when I met him.
Right.
But he was so brilliant. And so he used to come to some of the records and hang out. And then he told me he was going to get his own studio. And after a while, I decided, you know what, I'm going to check him out,
Yeah.
And of course, I wasn't surprised. He was great at it.
Yeah, really great. And I did a run of records. I think I did 7 of my albums at the Bunker.
Yeah,
even
we did your record there.
We did my record there, exactly, in 2019. Super fun.
Yeah.
The bass you used, the electric bass you used on this new record is the Butterscotch. It's the
Yeah,
Yamaha.
and this one, check it out. This is a relatively new bass. It's the same old model from 24 years ago.
Yes.
But before Chick died, he had talked about, he got all excited because we had done that European tour with the trio, with Weckl, and that was a beautiful time. The trio, that was special.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is we made a record before that was up for Grammy and everything. But that was just like, after not seeing each other for years, we rehearsed one day, and then the next day we do a live record in front of people in Florida.
Wow.
It's like, yikes. But after that, we went on the road, and man, that stuff, it really developed.
Yeah.
And Weckl has a recording of that and a live video and everything from Firenze, which I hope someday comes out, because it's an amazing, it was a beautiful night, and Chick was on fire. So, so the story was, when we had done that tour, we got back. That was a summer tour. In the fall, he was saying, man, we got to go out again with the electric band too. I'm so excited. He was all fired up. And in fact, he had plans for Dave and I to come down to his studio to record this trio concerto that he had written, that he was sort of fooling around playing with Brian and McBride.
Yeah.
So
I saw that show.
Yeah,
one of his very last shows in Madrid.
So what happened was he never got to do it.
Right.
We were supposed to. He wanted Weckl and I to come down and do it.
Yeah.
In Florida. So after he's passed, we did that record in Budapest at the big hall there.
Yeah.
And we had Becca Goshisvili, the incredible, and also Gadi Lahavi, another young player that Chick liked, and this other guy who. Daniel Szabo, who was Hungarian, who Danilo had taught.
Okay.
So anyway, that happened. But what didn't get to happen was the electric band tour. And when he told me he was going to do it, I said, you know what, I'm going to retire the red one. The red one I used for a long time.
Right.
Just going to leave it home because it's pretty beat up, but it still sounds good. But I'm going to get a new, because I had a Butterscotch one years ago.
Right.
And I had a talented student at Berkeley, this one guy from Turkey.
Yeah.
And his name is Yaman. He was so good, man. He was a good groove player, really good groove player, but he also transcribed a Freddie Hubbard solo and played it so beautiful with the right phrasing. I was like, I love this kid forever. And he was looking for a 6-string, and I had all these basses. Yeah. So I sold him my original prototype Butterscotch.
Okay.
Because he's a great kid.
Nice.
He's a man now.
Yeah.
So he's not a kid. But so then I thought, I really like. Then I heard him play, and I went, damn, I shouldn't have got rid of this Butterscotch. So then I decided I like that color. So they sent me a new one. And then it became an emotional thing because then he was gone.
Right.
And the bass was there that I got specifically to play with him.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to play this bass for a while.
Yeah.
And it played really good.
I mean, that was incredible to me that your amp didn't show up at that show with John Cowherd and Brian in LA. And it was so super singing. So singing. And on this record, it's the low end is it's so hard to describe sounds with words, right?
Yeah.
It's almost pointless, but there's I think so much about your sound with the Ken Smith on the original records.
Oh yeah,
and the transition.
People were upset with me when I switched.
When you switched, right?
But I was like, that bass has 2 sounds in it. It's not enough for me. I need more. I need to be, when I'm playing bottom. I want people to not know it's a 6-string.
Right. Well, I mean, mission accomplished, because that's exactly what I was getting towards, was it doesn't have that hard edge. It's not like a cinder block or a brick. It's more chalky and a little more malleable.
Yeah.
Again, weird to use words for sounds, but at least those were my emotional attachments to it when I heard this new record. I was like, whoa, there's so much in there.
Yeah, it's a really, and it's the same, really, as the ones that people buy.
But also, you had told me you had been working on the electric sound more.
Yeah.
Which is
because I wanted to. I keep going darker as I get older.
Yes.
Because I lived through the '80s and I grew to hate brightness, hate it. So I kept going darker, and I had that semi-hollow was killing
beautiful,
too.
Yeah.
But it's heavy, and I had to get a cortisone shot after touring with it, because originally I went out like an idiot with a regular strap, and I almost killed myself.
You have a double one for it now?
No, I have the
Yeah.
And that bass is really special, but I can't travel with it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and I don't want it to get wrecked.
Yeah.
This bass, it's phenomenal. It's a road warrior too.
Yeah.
It's just solid body and just boom,
So, but what have you been doing something specific recently with the hands, with the calluses, with the approach?
Really just trying to make it as dark as I can.
And practicing through an amp with effects?
No, I don't really practice with an amp ever. But I did practice sometimes with an amp when I got my HX Stomp.
Right. And that was
like it.
That's beautiful. I mean,
it's
dialed in
nice.
some reverbs and
But on the record, I didn't use the HX Stomp.
Oh.
That's
all
a
outboard
reverb
gear?
that John,
I
we
mean,
didn't have to deal with it.
If you have it in the studio.
Because John knows what I like, and he knows what I'm going for. I don't even remember what he used.
Right.
Because I trust him.
So when it came to play this not uncomplicated music at the end of the day, how played in was it for the guys? Was this really the first time they played it on the record? Because you did
except for there was a couple of tunes that they had played, like Think Fast.
Because you did a trio tour, which was a live record, right? In 2022.
Yeah, but this is brand new music after the
completely
trio.
different.
Yeah. So we had played at the Vanguard. Finally, the first trio week at the Vanguard with my own group happened in May.
Wow. Okay.
So they had played Think Fast.
Yeah.
They had played the Calypso one called Sonrisa. They had played a few of the things, but none of the through composed electric tunes.
Right.
Those were all written after that.
And how you directing?
Yeah,
you guys are feeling.
I had to do head fakes and the whole thing, and it was it was a lot for me because I had a lot to deal with there, and I'm trying to play stuff that's kind of I never think about. Oh, is this going to be? When I'm sitting there writing a song like that, I'm stretching and I'm doing some things, and I don't think about what it's going to have to play it a bunch of times.
All of the components of that composition together, right? and all these chordal voicings plus melodies.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, what was I thinking? You know, and I got in there, and you know, we were able to do it.
And there was a little bit of overdubbing with Chris on a couple of things.
Yeah, the only overdubbing happened with Chris on Lipim, the African tune. I wrote the melody, and then I wrote some bass clarinet parts. In fourths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and we tweaked it a teeny bit when we got in there, but
it's just a really big sound for a trio.
Yeah.
It's like no chords, but that's so not that doesn't describe it well at all because it's so rich in harmony. I think something I've always admired about you is whether it's literally dense or actually quite sparse sonically, it's still rich with harmony, whether it's a bass note and a melody note or whether it's an orchestra.
Well, thank you.
When I think back to like Heart of the Bass, which is quite thick in terms of the writing.
Yeah. And I didn't write the concerto. Jeff Beal wrote that concerto, who's a famous composer now. But that was his entrance into LA. Like he had come down and met Chick and everything, and after that he wound up moving.
And Chick is on that record, right?
Yeah. That was the first record that he put on Stretch. His became a division of GRP.
Right.
Because nobody else would make that record. One day we were driving, because we were on the tour for years.
It's adventurous.
Yeah, he said, do you have any dreams? You know, what would you do if somebody let you do it? I'm like, well, I always thought I wanted to do a record with the orchestra to have the 6-string bass play. That was the first piece ever written for 6-string bass and orchestra and acoustic bass in the same piece.
Wow.
The only other one that I really know that exists is the one that Mark Anthony Turnage wrote me later on.
With Schofield and with Pete? Oh, no.
No, that was Scorched. That wasn't my piece. But then through knowing him, he agreed to write me a piece. He wrote me a piece for string orchestra, and it's hard. I played that a lot in Europe at one point, and it was frightening. You know, it's like, you know, there's some stuff up there with the bow and everything, but some of the stuff is beautiful. Like with the 6-string, it's like Vaughan Williams writes for the 6-string. It's like really beautiful, and then his stuff can be edgy too. There's some really thick, dark. Like he's incredible.
Yeah,
incredible orchestration too.
Where are you at now? You recently turned 65.
Yeah.
And I pray that I am a 1% of where you are at energy-wise for music in 20 years' time. Like that's what I'm looking at and aspiring to. Where are you at on a daily basis with what you feel you have to do for how you want to perform, for where you want to be musically?
It's always, now for someone who practiced like a maniac for so long, you know, then you have children and then you have to juggle this and that and you have all this stuff and then teaching. And so I don't have those huge chunks all the time to practice. Yeah. But I was boning up for that record, let me tell you. Because I was afraid, like, okay, you got these voicings that you need to make them speak clearly and I don't want to hear any muted things that you don't intend. So I had to really get in there.
Were there some specifics? Like
I was shedding the music.
Yeah, okay.
I was shedding the music and thinking about, you know, just to feel comfortable moving in and out of that stuff.
And now you've been back in New York since you said 96? 96?
Long time.
So what was the transition like in terms of the calls you were getting and what the scene was like in New York?
I was so lucky. I was blessed. I mean, a lot of people knew that I came back. I started playing with Brecker, you know, and all these different people. And at first I started that bass collective because I wanted to do some teaching. I wanted to have something on the side that was kind of solid. And I did that for a while and then got the gig at City College later on, which was great. But I did, you know, Randy and Michael Brecker also hooked me up with a contractor, this great contractor in New York named Sandy Park, and she started calling me.
For studio work?
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of stuff with the bow and sections.
Are you still working a lot on the bow?
I still work on it.
It takes super maintenance, right?
Yeah. I didn't really do anything with the bow on this record, but but I've been doing a lot for a long time. I mean, in fact, I'm prepared. I got to prepare now for a chamber music concert in the spring with my old buddy Larry Dutton from the Emerson Quartet.
Okay. We're
doing a bunch of stuff. We're doing the Dvorak String Quintet, which I've done with him before. And, you know, got to get that. There's a few little things in there that you got to do.
I first heard you doing that on a jazz record with the quartet record you made with Chick and Bob Berg and Gary Novak.
Oh yeah. Time Warp.
Time Warp, yeah. No, that was just like
Chick really encouraged me a lot about the bow.
Okay.
Because I had been, studying at college, I was really in there. And then, when my teacher tried to get me to quit everything else, I bailed.
So you like rebelled against it?
Yeah. And so then I went on the road and played electric bass with Cap Mangione for a whole summer. And then went from there. And I was in the studio scene in LA playing a lot of electric, but I was playing a lot of acoustic, playing a lot of jazz gigs, and still trying to study here and there with the bow, with people.
Yeah.
And then when I came back to New York, though, I got real serious about it. I had asked Tom Martin, I'm moving back to New York. I want to take my bow arm. I need a good French bow master to help me get to the next place. And he didn't even bat an eyelash. He just said, Johnny Schaefer. And John Schaefer had been principal bass of the New York Philharmonic during Bernstein and all that.
Yeah.
And by the time I moved out there, he was playing a little bit, and then he retired, and he just was helping with the orchestra manager.
Yeah.
Bad cat.
Yeah.
Incredible. And really helped me a lot with my bow arm and helped me with my left hand. And I'm lefty.
Okay.
But he kicked my butt. Like I went in there and the first thing he said was, yeah, you're really talented, but your left hand is terrible. I'm like, wow.
Wow, okay.
Okay.
Deep into decades into your career already.
Yeah. And my left hand was like my calling card in many ways. So he took me to another level of pitch because I've always been anal about pitch, but he took me to another place.
Okay. And
Beautiful.
You really see massive gains?
Yes, those 2 years were incredible. And I practiced a lot. But then we started having kids, so I couldn't take lessons anymore.
Practice went down. Yeah.
But I still practice a lot. I still I'll be shedding for that gig. And I always make sure I'm feeling flexible before I do a big film, And
so you're still doing film stuff
yes,
in New York? Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing. One thing that is now, with talking about New York, that has popped into my head is, and I've always wanted to ask you about this since I first heard the record, was working on Pilgrimage.
Boy, that was
Mike.
deep. Well, first of all, the one before it was also amazing, Quindectet.
Yeah,
incredible.
Wide angles.
And he was already fighting that thing.
Yeah.
But just, being with Michael and, I lived 5 minutes from him.
Right.
He used to call, ring the doorbell for an espresso.
Yeah.
He'd come by while we were waiting with the kids at the bus stop, hold up traffic, he'd be rapping, and the people got mad. I love that guy. He was really, we became really close.
Yeah.
And so, for years he would talk to me every time he was making records, and I was, I wish I was on that record,
Yeah.
And, finally, he decided to call me, and I was so thrilled because we had played live.
Yeah.
He started calling me to play live when I went back. And then Pilgrimage, unbelievable.
Yeah.
The Quindectet one, Wide Angles, was amazing.
Right.
And then and of course, Pilgrimage was even more emotional because he was fighting for his life.
Yeah.
And but he played so great on that record. When it was all done, we were sitting on the couches and in that old studio. It was a brand new studio
Legacy.
actually.
No,
Legacy,
yeah.
Giant soundstage,
like
amazing. We did films in there.
Yeah.
But that was incredible. And just sitting around, Pat Metheny said, Mike, we don't have to go on the road, but what do you think? You want to play a week in New York when the record comes out? Michael said, yeah, man, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And Mike was all gung-ho to do that, the Balkan record that he wanted to do with all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because he was talking to me about that a lot.
With Farmers Market and all those guys from Norway, the Bulgarian guys as well.
The Bulgarian guys from Queens or whatever, he was going to apprentice with them.
Yeah.
And so I was excited about that, and we all thought he was going to push through after that. Because he was like...
After the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched him. He stood and played his...
you could have told me that was his first album when he was in his 20s, and I would have said,
he was firing.
Sounded amazing.
And boy, some hard bass parts on that record. Jeez. That's when I had the French bass, the Viome.
That amazed me, thinking about Herbie on some of those tunes.
Unbelievable.
And how, the tunes were so dialed in and perfect, but they were really complex. Not easy music to...
Herbie sounded unbelievable. Yeah. Even if you just said... if you just took the way he played on that ballad, When Can I Kiss You Again?
Oh.
That's enough to chew on for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. Because that was a down tempo, right?
Yes.
And Jack was killing. And we were in there, and I'm just like, I can't believe it. And when he started his solo, it was like somebody clicked on some turbines and the engine started grinding, and he was like going and stretching and stretching and stretching. And I was like, how can he do it?
Yeah.
How does he do it? And it was incredible.
Do you ever find yourself in a moment like that getting so distracted because it's so ridiculous?
Clicking
like, where's
luckily
the
it
form
was a slow tempo.
Right.
Because if it had been he just blew my head off. I was a 12 kid. I was like 12 years old again, listening to him with Miles.
Yeah.
It was something. And I've had a chance to play with Herbie a fair amount. And at the big celebration of Chick that we did at Jazz at Lincoln Center, that was a musical director. Helped put together the thing. Yeah. For a year it took me to put it together. But some of the highlights of those, and it was incredible playing with all these people. And we had Christian and we had all these great players. But the amazing thing was we did that 2 nights, and each night Brian and I played trio with Herbie, a couple of tunes.
Wow.
And one was Maiden Voyage, unbelievable. Yeah. Like, how many times has he played that? And it was mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And the other thing that he did that killed me was, I said, early on in the process when I called him, he said, I'll do it. I said, I have a favor to ask, and you can say no. Chick's tune, Eternal Child, is one of those, it's like Chopin, it's like a classic. Would you play it? And first he took it, he said, yeah, I'll check it out. And then he was saying, at one point, I don't have time to get through it, and I want to do it justice. It's really special, and I don't want to. And then later on, he called me back and said, I can do it. And I knew he could do it.
Right.
It was just a question, and maybe it was an emotion. I didn't even question it.
Sure.
I said, it doesn't matter what you play.
Yeah.
You choose. Just the fact that you're coming and playing is enough.
Yeah.
I mean, magic every time. So
you guys did play a trio?
We did.
Tell me there's a recording of that.
There is. Oh. Jazz at Lincoln Center. They had it up for a while. You could probably look for it on their archives.
Okay.
It's insane to hear him play that song. And they were close, really close. So all those experiences, the funny thing about this record for me is all the experiences that I've had being mentored by these kings and queens of jazz music. It's like, and also I really started getting way into trio playing, without the chords.
Right.
Years ago now when we did, Remembrance.
That was with Lovano, right? Yeah, exactly.
And that happened because of an accident. When we were doing the record called Communion that Brad played on some stuff with Brian and Lovano and I, he couldn't make a rehearsal. Something, he was hung up. He was on tour or something. So we went up to rehearse at Joe's house. It was just Brian and Lovano and me. We started playing, and I was like,
oh, this is happening.
We can't cancel the piano now, but it was so good.
Yeah.
So I kept it in the back. I said, one day we're going to do something. Then we finally did it. But the thing is, with this trio, we've gone out on the road,
right,
with Brian and Chris, and I wanted it to be connected to Sonny and his trio things, and way Train would play trio sometimes when McCoy would lay out, and also the way Joe Henderson played trio. I wanted to be connected to that thing because it's very important to me, and at the same time, I didn't want it to just sound like we were trying to sound like them. But these guys are so brilliant, it immediately had its own, like when we used to go out on the road, we only did like a European tour and a handful of hits, and then we did the week at the Vanguard.
Right.
But every night was incredibly special.
Talk about, incredible, you're talking about that Herbie solo on that slow tune.
Unbelievable.
But now, fast forward to this record, it's around 60 BPM, the slow tune, walking, big, wide quarter notes.
Oh, the one that, we played that at the show the other night. It's called Deluge on 7th Avenue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The time on this is ridiculous.
It's down.
It's so huge, and I had to get the metronome and tap it out and be like, what tempo is this exactly? It's 60, maybe even 59. I was like, oh, this is really, this is real technique.
It was so fun.
When people talk about chops and about this and that, to me, that was that's so hard to do.
And with Brian, it's easy.
It sounds easy,
And Chris he sounded like one of the greatest saxophone players in the history of jazz.
Right.
That's what he sounds like.
Because there are moments where you're like, am I listening to Train? but for real, and not because of the notes are the same or the licks are the same, but it's the feeling, the pressure that he pushes, the energy that he's got.
Well, the way he played on Wayne's tune, House of Jade, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mega heavy. Run me through like how much, you said you did the record in a day. Was it like, we've done a take and that's probably going to be it?
It was remarkably, like, because it took a while to get sound and everything.
Sure.
We didn't start at 10.
Right.
It was more like 11 or 12. And we were done by the early evening.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe how that happened.
So not really more than 2 takes on anything.
Yeah, some one take and you know, those were involved, like the cueing on the through composed stuff.
Yeah.
They just really focused.
How do you translate that? This is the most fascinating part to me, actually, I think, is how you translate that to the stage when you get out of a controlled environment and you still want to have the same impact.
Yeah.
What is the experience you draw upon to be like, okay, I've been here before, and there are always 10, 15 different things happening on every different stage.
Well, the good news is it's Brian and Chris.
Yeah.
And
so you've already won.
Sound checks are easy because there's no room that Brian can't conquer. I don't care how reverberant it is.
Right.
He can play so soft. It's like there's never any. It's
like
magical.
huge intensity at whatever volume. Right.
And Chris and the rapport we have is for many years. So I just feel very safe and like really just, even though we stretch and we go for stuff and we're reckless, I just feel like sonically, you know how it is. If people create sounds that make it comfortable for you to play, it's all the difference in the world.
It's the greatest thing, right?
Then it's only on me to make sure I get the sound, right.
Do you think you have off nights sometimes? Do you ever feel that?
What's that?
Do you feel like you have off nights sometimes? Are you ever critical of yourself?
I'm always critical.
Or have you?
Oh yeah, like the other night I came out of that thing and I was like, man, I should have played better. They gave me an
LA?
award. Yeah.
Oh.
And everybody's saying, are you kidding? Like Adam Rogers was like, no. But I felt like I could have played better, but I should have played better. So I never know. But the good thing is, when I play with them, they play so much stuff that makes me excited and happy that I can't stay mad too long, because I have to accept that, nobody knows what I'm hearing in my head.
Yeah.
And how close I get. Some nights it feels like things are coming up rosy, and then there are other nights.
That. Yeah.
There are other nights it's like I'm not having it, And so, but I try not to obsess about it because it's still a community action.
Right.
When you play this music, jazz music is communal music. It's not about me. It's about us. So they, even if I come in and I don't like, this was happened a lot also with Wayne's band. That's why I call Spirit Fall. I felt like the Holy Spirit was falling on the band. Things were happening that you can't take credit for that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we're playing things and we're creating pieces that sound, some people would come up after, oh yeah, what was that second piece? It's like, I don't know.
No idea.
It just happened.
Yeah.
And so, we could come to a gig and maybe the travel was brutal that day and you're really tired. And I would go to the stage and, because we would always start from nothing. And the rule was anybody could play a section of any of the music. Mm. And then we would sort of like go in. Wayne would cue something, but it was not a cue. He would just start playing one of the pieces. And maybe in page 4 of it. Yeah. So I'd have to like, whew, okay.
Okay.
So, but invariably, if I got to, and I felt like, I don't have anything. Mm. And I would wait. That's the only band I've ever been in where I could lay out in different points to change the orchestration.
You guys on this trio record, nobody's rushing to get to the point.
Right.
Everyone is super patient. That's something that really stood out to me. I was like, this could be 3 minutes long, or it could go 12 minutes long, and it would be just as engaging because nobody's rushing.
Well, again, they make me feel so comfortable. There's no anxiety. You know what I mean? It's like and it took me to, I was 65 years old to get there, but better late than never. No, but I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be around these giants who taught me how to focus on the, on the outcome of the whole thing and not be like, micromanaging and so self-absorbed that it's all about whether I play, a certain way or not. Because the more you get outside yourself, the better you play.
Were you able to lose the ego, if you even had one, early on? Was that a byproduct of being around those people?
Yeah, because when I was younger, I was so insecure about showing people that I could play. Oh. And sometimes when I see those things that people say, oh, that's a great, yeah, you play and got it. Sometimes I look at those and I go, man, you played way too long, John. You should have stopped after, 4 choruses would have been good.
Okay.
And you played 8 or 9 because I was so excited to be there with Chick. I look back at myself and yes, I was still all for the music and all for serving that band. There was a lot of times where I was the straight man because cats were playing a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
So I had to really lay some stuff down and but I had a lot of room to blow too.
Yeah.
So I really had the opportunity to do both, to really refine my accompanying skills, which I also was in the studios. I was used to playing for the song.
Sure.
Not even just a piece of music, but a song with vocals, and to get out of the way and try to play as least amount of stuff. That was really an education. That helped me in my jazz playing a lot, I think.
The self-editing.
Yeah. Because the producers, the trick was always get him to ask you to play more, not less.
Sure.
So I learned I was sat next to all these crazy people, and it said Jim Keltner, Tommy Tedesco.
You were in the real LA studio scene.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't doing as much as Nathan and some of the other guys, because I was on the road a lot playing jazz.
Right.
But I did a lot.
Yeah. Were you the guy who showed up with a ton of gear for those kind of things?
At first I didn't, and then they told me, it doesn't look good. You come in carrying your own gear. You can't do that. You need a cartage guy. Because I'm still the kid from East Flatbush. So I'm like, cartage guy? Come on.
Yeah.
So Joe Hesse, who used to work for Chick, I made him my cartage man. I actually started him off in the cartage business because I liked him so much. And I said, Joe, bring the bass stand with the 5 or 6 basses, it'll look good. So he would do that for me.
And you'd still just play the one?
It depended.
So you did range in the studio?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I even did a fair amount of fretless playing in those days because people wanted it,
And a precision bass, a jazz bass, like the regular kind of stuff?
I had different stuff over the years. I let one P bass go that I should have never. I think it was the 50s one, but I have a really good one now.
Okay.
Which, I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but it's on the record. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I played the 65P on the Lepim. The rest of it's butterscotch.
Gotcha. Right.
The rest of it's the Yamaha 6. And, but I also have a 64 Jazz, which is beautiful. And again, because of Chris Paler, my mentor, he helped me get those. He sold them to me really for what they are, what they usually cost.
Yeah.
Pretty cheap, although for me it's still a lot of money because I remember when they were $250 in the paper.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
The paper, exactly.
In San Francisco, when we lived out there was the pink section that had the used
classifieds.
things.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
$250 you could get a 60s P bass.
That's painful to think about right now. Okay. On that bombshell. We could talk for hours about this stuff, but we'll do it again and just tell everyone the name of the record, the label, everything.
Spirit Fall, and it's on Edition Records, a great label from England that I really love. Dave Stapleton and his gang.
JohnPatitucci.com. We'll link everything below. I'm guessing it will be out for streaming and everywhere.
Well, it's going to be out on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Fully. It's already been pre-order. You can do pre-order now, stuff like that. But on Valentine's Day, it's out.
Yeah, this will be coming out the day of the release. To push
Beautiful.
it. And what are you doing this year? Where can people come and see what you are doing now?
I'm gonna be doing. It's funny, I'm trying to put together a few things here and there. We won't get to the Vanguard until 2026 because they're so booked up.
Okay.
But in 2026, Brian and Chris and I are doing a trio week to celebrate the record.
Great.
But in this year, I'm doing. I just recently got called to do a concert and a masterclass at North Texas State, and Brian couldn't make it, but I got. the great Obed Calvaire.
My
and
great
Chris,
friend. Yeah.
Chris is going to play.
Awesome.
And we're going to blow and do stuff from the record.
Nice.
I got to practice.
Yeah.
And then there's some other stuff going on. I'm going out with Danilo and Ravi Coltrane and Brian Blade.
Awesome.
Some more Wayne Shorter legacy stuff in Europe. There's a bunch of different things happening.
Are there any more plans for that quartet with Chris and Brad and Jonathan Blake?
I don't know.
I heard some things that sounded incredible.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
And Brian couldn't make that tour, so Jonathan played and beautifully too.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's the first time we ever really played extensively. Okay. And we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was gelling. It was really gelling.
So, who knows?
Yeah.
There's some other stuff in the works. You know, my friend Sergio Gimigliano, he does the Peperoncino Jazz Festival in Calabria, a beautiful guy. So he's coming in, he's been doing it in New York. He's been New York version for a few years now. And this coming June, it's like June 10 through 14, it's going to be really cool.
Okay.
Pino and I have been talking about it for years, doing something. So it's going to be Nate Smith, Pino Palladino, myself, and James Francis.
Amazing.
And we're going to probably do some like arrangements on some Train and Wayne. Because Pino's a Wayne fanatic too.
Wow. Okay. So I might have to fly back to see this. Yeah, this sounds good.
and I love. We met in '86.
Yeah.
And at a time when I knew who he was, but he didn't know who I was. And we hit it off. And then he heard me with Chick.
I was going to say, had he heard? He was about to hear the electric band then.
Well, what happened? That's a funny story. His then girlfriend, who became his wife, Maz. She was at Ronnie Scott's, the first set we played with the electric band.
Oh.
And she called him up on the break and said, "Get down here right now." So this is the funny part. So somehow I met him at the bar between sets. I didn't know it was him.
Oh.
And he didn't know who I was. So we're talking, we really hit it off. And then I'm like, "Oh, excuse me, I got to get up there and play." And then we hit with the band. And then we became friends because I already knew, if he had told me his name, I already was a fan of his because of the Paul Young stuff.
Yeah.
I heard it.
Yeah.
Every time you go away.
Yeah, exactly.
And tear your playhouse down.
Yeah.
And, I was like, who is that? When I heard it, because it was like a fresh, fretless voice.
Yeah.
Like.
Hadn't heard that before.
And it was killing.
Yeah.
And then, over the years we got to know each other and we were able to talk about our love for R&B and everything. And then he decided to let people know big time his love and that stuff with D'Angelo and then John Mayer and everything else. Yeah. And all the pop hits that he played on. Yeah. Forget about it.
He's endless list of them.
One of my favorite bass players of all time.
At that time, had you known it was him, would you have been a little more like on edge as a player on stage? Do you ever get that sense when there's somebody that means a lot to you in the audience, or you just?
I may have, but Chick's music was so intense. The electric band was so intense. I didn't really have a lot of time to think. I'm sure I would have felt a little intimidated because I loved his playing.
Was there a sense of bravado with that music, like a sense of
we memorized everything, and that was when I was young and I could memorize everything,
right.
So we had so much fun and we played so many hundreds of gigs,
right?
And at that time in my life, if you had woke me up out of a sound sleep at 3 a.m. and poured water on my face and threw the bass in my hand, I could have played match easy because it was almost like auto response.
Yeah.
Now, not so much. Also, I realized after a while it was a little harder. Is the Smith, the neck wasn't as wide.
Yes, and maybe not as thick.
It's very thin.
Very thin, right? Yeah.
So it was really. I could pick up that bass and play match easily.
Right.
And I can still play match, but I have to work harder.
How was your action on the Smith?
In those days,
significantly lower than now on the Yamaha.
Yeah, I think it was lower in those days, and now it's maybe not as high as it was a few years ago, but it's still. I'll let you play it one more time. It's pretty reasonable, but it's still. But when I pick up some kid's bass, it's still high.
Yeah.
Mine.
Yeah. People give me such a hard time having got that from you, and now I play like you fit a soda can under there, and they take the bass. They're like, "Come on, man, what are you doing?"
Listen to your tone. That's what you're doing. When you played that little excerpt, when I saw I heard the podcast of the latest one that you were doing. Yeah. I was like, you always had a great sound, but that really struck me how lyrical that sound was, and also the way you use the reverbs and stuff. I have to take some lessons from you and find out what that was, because that sound was
stereo.
Beautiful.
You don't want to know actually, because it's stereo.
It's
and stereo
expensive.
is like, well, it's just heavy.
Yeah.
If you want to have amps, or you have to have it's a whole thing. Let's maybe end with that. Like, explain give people your version of why the high action. It's the question I'm asked maybe more than anything else now.
Yeah.
Because of you, because I got it from you and now I do it and people know me for it a little bit. What is your explanation for the high action, specifically on the electric bass?
Well, in truth, if you go back to some of the older players, and Will Lee too, it's not really that high. It's just that everybody got so like this so they could tap and they could do that. To me, that's the aberration. Okay. Like, coming from acoustic bass, coming from hearing like Duck Dunn and those guys, they did not have low action.
No.
It was high enough so they could dig in. I don't see it as that
Anthony didn't
high.
have low action, right?
I don't think so.
No. The sound is just so reverberating, the natural sound.
And, there are also guys who have much lower action that have beautiful sound, like Marcus Miller. Yeah. Like, it's incredible, his sound.
His action is that low?
I don't know if it's that low, but I know it's slower than mine.
Okay.
And it's also, because when you're slapping too, you don't want to have it too high. Right. Because you want to be able to not have to go like this.
Right, and there are certain things that it doesn't work for, right? The super high action. And have you found issues with intonation, for instance, with the higher action?
Mine's not. I never let it get so high that the intonation gets messed up.
So that's your breaking point. Basically.
Yeah. No, I won't do that.
Yeah.
And it's why I arrived at that is because also my brother studied classical guitar and had a tone and a vibrato, and I learned how to do the vibrato from him. And once I got that together, I was like, if the string's laying on the frets like that, I have no dynamic range.
Right. To me, it feels like you can't articulate when it's that close to the fret.
You can't.
Right.
It's like I can't play an acoustic bass when the action's too low.
Right.
I can't play it. When somebody gives me the electric to pick it up,
clunk, clunk, clunk. Yeah.
I can't do it. And the cats with the ramps and everything, I can't do it. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I respect Gary, of course.
Sure, but his is a completely different approach, and it's fretless.
Yeah.
Which I think is you kind of need the reverberation of the string on the fretboard, on the fingerboard.
It's different.
And he has such a light touch.
He plays really light. Yeah. I'm just not that guy.
Me neither.
So,
all right, okay, everyone, you've heard it from the horse's mouth directly now. Stop bugging me about it, please.
It's not really, it's only unusual now because action has gotten so much lower in the last 20 years of bass playing. Yeah. And there's this thing about, speed is the only goal with that. Yeah. Because sound can't be the goal with that.
Right.
So much. Because if it's laying on the fretboard,
the note doesn't last.
Because I always practice without an amp. Right. So I was pulling a sound out of the instrument without even knowing what I was doing, and but I did have it a little lower with Chick, and then I started coming back up through the reunion phases and stuff. Yeah. Because I wanted to be able to play a note and make it hang and be able to move it around.
Yes.
Absolutely. Like the other night I was playing a little bit of Spiritual and a little bit of Alani's Lament. Yeah. So the note has to hang.
Yes.
You're
on a long melody like
that.
Yes, yes.
So that's the reason why I did that. And also I like the sound of when I'm playing time. Like Duck Dunn, I noticed that he really hit that hard. Yeah. There's no way his action was low. And Will Lee grooves his butt off.
Yeah, and big action.
So it's not like acoustic bass action. Right. So it's that to me it doesn't seem that high when when you're stuck sometimes on the road and you play a bass de jour and the action's way up there and the adjusters are broken or they can't and you're like, oh boy,
here we go.
We're back to 1920 now. That's rough. That's high action.
Yes.
Bass players, electric bass players are, I think they don't know what high action is really.
Right. Well. Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Go check out the new record, and we'll do it again sometime.
Thank you for having me.
Love
This
you,
is
man.
a lot of fun. Let's go eat.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I'll get the bass. You got to check out where it is.